So what's the truth about making your first $1 million? I'm gonna give you 8 rules of the jungle. I call it the jungle. I'm down here on my treadmill desk in the basement, and people have been asking me to do these old talks where I just get in front of a camera and just talk for a long time. No flash, no pizzazz, no lifestyle stuff, no cars, just straight talk. This is basically, I did a tweet today, what I wish I had done, they had taught me in school, but more importantly, I said, if I had control of my life, what would I have done differently? I'm gonna tell you, this is unrelated to what I'm about to say, but it's kind of a foreword to what I'm about to say, okay? And that is, number 1, I would have started a business before age 12 with the encouragement of all the people supposedly around me, school teachers, blah, 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 the elders, parents, everything. Number 2, I would have traveled as much as I could, going, of course, with a parent, but travel. This is, by the way, instead of school as we know it. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, I would have mastered a musical instrument. Okay. Number 4, I would have gotten a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt or MMA, some kind of thing like that. What was it, number 5? Let me just look here. Like I said, it's a little forward. Learning 4 languages fluently. Basically, the school system is garbage. Okay? People get mad when I say that, but I'm going to call a spade a spade. Now, I didn't have control of my life, and you didn't have control of your life when you were 12, so you got stuck with all this monotonous nothingness. So that's my foreword to the 8 things, the truth about making your first $1 million. In that foreword, if that had happened to you and I, we'd be a lot closer to our goals financially. Because as Warren Buffett says, the most correlated or causative factor in making your first $1 million is the age at which you start. So, the first rule of the jungle, and I call it the jungle, by the way, because trying to make your first $1 million, everybody wants to make $1 million. It's a jungle out there. Trust me. I've made $1 million before. I've made 10 million. I made 20 million, 50 million, I can tell you it's a jungle. People are going to come out of the woodwork. They're going to come out of the woodwork. They're not going to like you. They're going to be envious. They're going to call you out. It's going to be some family members. It's going to be some supposed friends. It's going to be society at large. People get mad about this subject of money. Trust me. When I put my first YouTube videos out in 2014, or 2014, 2015, I was like, people will like to see the journey. Like, I'm from a mobile home. I spent most of my teenage years. People want to see the journey to a Lamborghini. Nope. Oh, it's a rental. Blah, 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 blah. Like, welcome to the jungle, baby. So, step number 1, or rule number 1 of the jungle, because the jungle has different rules. Trying to make a first $1 million is different than trying to just lock yourself into a 9-to-5 job like most of society. So, number 1, everybody wants to go through the jungle. So supply and demand says it's going to be hard. Rule number 1 in the jungle is everybody, and let me just give you this analogy of the jungle. So here's you today in my right hand. Here's where you want to go in my left hand. Here's the pot at the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So that's making your first $1 million. In between there's a jungle. When I was 16 years old, I went to the Panamanian jungle. It's called the Darien jungle. At the time, it was considered the most dense jungle in the world. I'm not sure if it still is, but it's hard to go through. And it goes from Panama, and then there's the Darien jungle, and then there's Colombia. And they purposely have kept this jungle there because a lot of people wanted to go from Colombia into Panama, part of the drug trade. Now, that's a perfect analogy, perfect metaphor for what I'm talking about. A lot of people want to go across this, but very few do. And that's why I use the word jungle. It's not a playground out there. Okay, so step number 1, you have to understand in the law of supply and demand, there's only so much money in the world, okay? And everybody wants it. There's no people. Look, every other thing you can bring up in life, people will turn down. So for example, let's say your goal is to get married and have 2 kids. There's millions of people who don't want that goal. Let's say your goal is a religious goal. You want to you're a Christian or you're Muslim or whatever, and you want to achieve spiritual goals. There's millions of people who don't have that goal. Let's say your goal is to run a marathon. You want to run the Boston Marathon, complete it. There's millions of people that don't care. But if you say to people, hey, you want this lottery ticket? It's $1 million lottery ticket. Everybody will take it. Maybe 1 out of 100 million people will say no, but everybody will take it, which means it's more competitive than basically any other activity, any other goal you could have. Because money equals freedom for people. Money equals the ability to accomplish their other goals. So everybody wants money. So rule number 1 is, it's a jungle because everybody wants it. And so if you think it's going to be easy, if you think it's a jungle with no thorns and no vines and no alligators and no spiders that are all around ready to bite you. When I was in the Darien jungle, it took us about 7 hours, I think, by canoe. We had a little motorized canoe to go down, and we were doing it was with the church when I was 16, and there were dentists with us and doctors, and we went into a tribe that was still using bow and arrows. But I remember going that Darien jungle, going down the river. I forget what the name of the river was. Maybe it was the Darien. And there's definitely, I don't know if there were alligators or crocodiles, but there were things you didn't want to fall in that water. It was dangerous. It was hard. You had to keep your wits about you. That's the perfect metaphor. And the reason people are so surprised that most people give up on their way to making their first $1 million is they weren't expecting a jungle. They were expecting it to be like, it's just part of life. Like, I go to the gym. It's hard to get a 6-pack. Well, it's harder to make $1 million than get a 6-pack. For every 1,000 people who have a 6-pack, there's one person who made their first $1 million. Okay? So what's number 2? That's kind of a big picture. Let me give you a practical rule of the jungle for making your first $1 million. And that is, you should start with a service type business. Now, let me step back. So rule number 2, I'm writing them down while I'm on the treadmill so I don't accidentally jump around here. Number 2 is, let me rephrase it. You need to pick well what you do. And I gave you a hint for what I consider well. Pick well what activity you're going to focus on as you go across the jungle. Here's you today. There's a jungle. The other side is your first $1 million. Most people, what they do is they either try a 9-to-5 job. I saw some YouTube video. Oh my God. It said best way to make your first $1 million. Drive Uber. I was going, yeah, that'll take about 18 years. Do the math on Uber. You're not going to make $1 million. It said, save your money from your job, save whatever, $2,000 a year. Or I don't remember what it was, $2,000, $10,000. Invest it wisely. Put it in tax-free or tax-deferred retirement accounts. And in 40 years, you'll have $1 million. Yeah, well, that's true. But in 40 years, with inflation, $1 million is worth $200,000. So it's stupid advice. Okay, it's stupid advice. So choose well the activity that you're going to undertake on your way to your first $1 million, because most things ain't going to cut it. Now, some people, I do a little show like a Shark Tank. It's actually this show that I'm doing now. I have different versions of this show that I'm talking about right to you live on right now. And one of them is like a Shark Tank kind of show. And I have people put their business ideas and what they're working on, and we give away money and we vote on what's the best idea. Most people's ideas on how to get their first $1 million is horrible. Either it's way too big of a stretch, like I'm gonna build the next Uber. Okay, well, Uber is not a good first starting business to make your first $1 million. Even the founder of Uber, Travis, that was his second real thing he focused on. He first built a business and I think sold it for like 10 million bucks. His second or third idea was Uber. So on your way to make your first $1 million, you better choose well, because if you choose something that's too out of reach, odds are against you. And some people go, oh, you should shoot for the stars, Ty. Well, yeah, but you should shoot for a star that you can get to, because some stars are too far away. Study the solar system, study the universe. You're not getting to some stars. Not in our lifetime until there's some kind of quantum leap ability. So odds are you're not gonna go from your first business, to billionaire status. So pick well. Now, some people think too small. They're like, okay, Ty, here's what I'm gonna do to make $1 million. My first $1 million. I'm gonna launch what was this one person telling me? Oh, they had this app. I'm not gonna say what it is because it'll embarrass them, but I'll just give you a hint. It was like underwater basket weaving app. And I said, that's too small. There's only like 30 people in the world who care about underwater basket weaving. So you can choose too small or you can choose too large. So choose well what's going to get you across that jungle. And my practical suggestion, is you start with a service business. You don't start with an app. You do not start with something that takes a lot of capital, even if you could borrow it. Even if you could raise VC money, start with a service business. So what are service businesses? What do I mean? Well, before the internet, a great example would be like a dog walking company, right? And then you get a couple dog walkers under you and you get a reputation in your neighborhood. And next thing you know, in the city, I used to live in Raleigh, North Carolina, let's say a smaller city, you have 10 people working for you and you're walking 200 dogs a day. Each person walks 20, you walk a few, and you have people under you. That's a service business in the old school before the internet. Or another one would be like a personal chef or a personal trainer. These are all service-based businesses, right? You don't need a lot of money to become a personal trainer. You get a certification, or some trainers don't even have a certification, and you sell your time. So service businesses, you're primarily selling your time. Dog walkers, selling your time. You could scale the business a little bit by getting other dog walkers under you. Car wash, mobile car wash. There's some people that wash my cars. They build a little service business. They're selling their time. They're like, hey, I, the owner, along with 2 assistants, will show up at your house and will wash your cars. They've been washing, now I have like 4 or 5 cars at that house, but at the peak I had 7 cars there. So they would come, I forget what I'd pay them, but they probably make $1,000 or $1,500 just doing that. They sold their time. So service business is the S in service business, selling your time. So those are kind of old school, traditional. Those have been around for 50, 100 years, mowing people's grass. Fast forward to today, I suggest you build an internet-based service business because you can scale it, you can reach people quicker, you're not limited by your own neighborhood. So the best service businesses are the ones, if you've seen my ads all over the internet, they've been advertising, start a social media marketing agency, start a home sharing management company, HSMC, where you use like Airbnb, you put people's houses up on Airbnb and you split the profit 50-50 from people Airbnb in their properties. You don't even have to own the land. Or own the real estate, I should say. Another one is an e-commerce agency or an Amazon agency. You help people who have an existing business, you sell your time, and you help them sell on Amazon. A lot of people who are business owners do not know anything about the internet, and they don't want to learn. The average business owner is over 50, 60 years old in most parts of the world. So if you know a little about the internet, you can sell your time as a service provider in a way that's much more likely to make you 6 figures at least. So you can charge them. I have a whole course for that. If you go to my website, you can see. That's not what I'm here to talk about. But I just want you to know, to get across the jungle, most people don't choose well. And therefore, they have no chance before they ever started. Really, they got no chance. I see people and I feel bad. They're on there like, I'm going to make my first $1 million. I'm like, you didn't choose well. It's a little bit like what one of my mentors, Dr. David Buss, said. I've never been married, but he'd been married, and he's spent 40 years studying psychology. He's one of the most respected psychologists who taught at Harvard and wrote all the textbooks used at Ivy League schools. And I just said, give me one piece of advice you've learned about marriage and dating. He said, choose well. He said all the stuff about, how to revive and fix a bad marriage or fix a bad dating relationship by going to therapists and practicing meditation together and all these things. He's like, better than all that is just choose the right person. And then you don't have that headache. Same with the rule of the jungle, the law of the jungle to getting to your first $1 million. If you choose the wrong person, you're going to spend all your time fixing and putting out fires, or you're going to just limit. There's not enough market. Like I said, this guy did $1 million app into something as stupid as like training people on how to do underwater basket weaving. It's got to be big enough, but not too big. So choose well. I could do a whole nother talk on that, but I gave you three. I think the three best opportunities right now is a social media marketing agency where businesses pay you $1,000 to $10,000 a month. It's Airbnb, where you use Airbnb, you find real estate, homes for sale, or people who have an extra vacation home. You go to them, say, these properties you own are just sitting, ma'am, sir. I'll put them on Airbnb. I can generate an extra $2,000 to $10,000 a month. I'll manage the people, and I'll split the money with you 50-50. So you start generating for yourself $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month there from a service business. And then, as I said, Amazon, another service business. I'm not necessarily saying you should sell on Amazon as an e-commerce provider. You should help other businesses do it. That's as more like as I said, a service provider. So those three real practical ones that you can do that I've seen people start in over 100 countries. I've had over 280,000 people go through my paid programs with in-depth training on these, and it works. Trust me, it works for the people who actually do it. Okay, so after you pick well, pick the right idea, pick the right business, what's the third rule? The third rule is you have to have thick skin. I'm talking to the point where, you know how like you have calluses on your feet and they don't even necessarily look that nice? Okay, that's how your whole mindset will have to be on your way to making your first $1 million. Because let me just give some examples of things that will happen to you on your way across the jungle to make your first $1 million. Family member will betray you. Most likely, I see it 6 or 7 out of 10 times. Somebody. I'll give you a public example. Dane Cook. You may have heard of Dane Cook, the comedian. At one point, he was like on top of the world, you know, and then he had his brother managing his money, or his half-brother or whatever, and now that half-brother's in prison because he stole, I think, over $10 million straight out of his bank account. You know, the person you thought you could trust, your own flesh and blood, no. Out there, you're on your way to making $1 million, and somebody's on the way to steal it. And so I saw a little interview. I don't know Dane Cook, but I saw a little interview where he was talking about how it made him, I don't want to say the word depressed, but something like that, to the point where maybe you don't want to proceed. And I'm telling you, when that first betrayal comes, you're going to have super thick skin, to the point where you're just like, oh yeah, I was expecting that. I'm good. I'm on my way to making my first $1 million. Someone stole 200,000 from me. Good. I'll make it up. That's the thick skin you need. And you ain't going to make it. I have a guy, a sales team, and I have a new guy that started with me. And this is just yesterday, he called somebody. They said, yes, I want to buy what you're selling. So, but the guy said, I'm a little busy now. Can you call me back in like 3 hours? So my staff guy called him back in 3 hours, and the guy just blew him off. Didn't answer the phone. Then he called him back again, and the customer on the other end was like, well, I'm kind of busy right now. And my staff guy got really mad, and he's like, Ty, I'm thinking of sending him a nasty message. And I said, welcome to the jungle, baby. Welcome to the jungle. People say one thing and do something. I said, is this really going to, because he was all thrown off. You could tell he was writing me this much on WhatsApp, writing me this long message. I said, you want to make $1 million? You're on your way to your first $1 million working for me? You literally are bent out of shape by this teeny little thing. This is teeny. No one even stole anything from you. You just had to do an extra phone call. But in this world we live in, people are getting weaker and weaker-willed. It's true. As one of the greatest thinkers, I think, the wisest person I've ever read, Will Durant, who won a Pulitzer Prize, he's dead now. He said, nations are born stoic and die Epicurean. And this modern Western world we live in, even the world as a whole, because we've become wealthier as an entire global civilization, were born stoic, meaning the original people who founded the United States or whatever country. These were people like with axes and chopping down trees and building log houses and surviving winters and almost starving to death. They were stoic. That's what was stoic. They had thick skin, and no matter what came, they just went right through it. Bullied their way right through the snow. Just, I'm going. Okay, I'm hungry. We're just going to go to bed on an empty stomach. Well, now, what the word Epicurean means is lover of pleasure. So, nations are born stoic and die Epicurean. I'm seeing a consistent pattern. I reach over 100 million people a year. I see a lot of people trying to make their first million or whatever it is their goal. And I see them getting thrown off by the smallest inconsequential thing. And I go, welcome to the jungle. I don't think you're going to make it. I'm going to bet against you. The first thorn bush that you bumped into that scratched you just a little bit, maybe didn't even draw blood, you're sitting here like, I got to stop. Come on, guys, give me an hour. I need to patch myself up. Oh, okay. This is the jungle. That's nothing. That's child's play. One of my favorite stories is Shaquille O'Neal and Hakeem Olajuwon, two very famous basketball players. And when Shaquille O'Neal came into the NBA, become a pro basketball player, he was used to being the biggest, strongest, toughest guy. He was over 7 foot tall. If you see Shaquille O'Neal when he was in college and first year in pro basketball, he was an amazing, just one of the strongest people ever to walk this earth. Trust me, in terms of athleticism. Kobe Bryant said the strongest person I've ever met is Shaq. Shaq in his prime. And so Shaq's used to just bullying people around on the basketball court all the way from junior high, high school, college. He played at LSU. Now he's in the pros. Even in the pros, there's an interview with Shaq. He said, I used to just throw one elbow at the beginning of the game just to set the tone and show people who was the boss, the king of the jungle. Well, he said the first time he played the Houston Rockets, had this guy, Hakeem Olajuwon, who was an immigrant, I think he came from Nigeria, came from Africa, wasn't quite as big as Shaq, but he was a big guy. He's like 6'10", right? Big guy. And Shaq goes, I think it was a playoff game or an important game. They're playing. And Shaq is being guarded by Hakeem Olajuwon, and he goes, I just want to show him who the boss was. So he said, I threw an elbow and hit Hakeem Olajuwon right in the square in the chest. He said anybody I'd ever done that to pretty much was intimidated for the rest of the game. So he said, I threw that, I scored the goal, and as we were running down, Hakeem Olajuwon just came up next to me and just went, because he has this deep voice, he went, good one, little man, and just kept playing and totally psyched Shaq out. He said, I threw my strongest blow at this Hakeem Olajuwon guy, and it didn't even faze him. He thought it was funny. And that's the attitude you need to make your first million to get across the jungle. When someone throws a blow to your chest, figuratively, hopefully not, actually, but they throw something at you, you're just like, ha ha. You do that to people get a little freaked out, and you make it through the jungle. You find me somebody who the first little thorn, like maybe your first business idea is going to fail and you're going to lose 6 months of your time and $10,000 or maybe $50,000. The first person just goes, ha ha, good one. Now I know what not to do next time. That's the person I'm betting on, okay? So rule number 3 of the jungle is you better have thick skin or you better not enter and just be happy with a 9-to-5 job. There ain't nothing wrong with a 9-to-5 job. There's nothing that makes a millionaire a better person than, somebody. Some of my favorite people on earth are Amish people. I lived with them for years when I was young. And a lot of them make $30,000, and they're nicer and greater in my mind, my estimation. I like them more than 99% of people I meet who make $1 million. So this is not a judgment call. I'm just saying, if you are one of those people called to be a business person, an entrepreneur, someone who makes money. And I do believe it's a calling. I don't believe it's for everybody. It's just like not everybody should be a doctor, but we do need a lot of doctors. Not everybody should be, a carpenter, but we need a lot of people in construction. Well, same with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs can do a lot of good in the world. Look at people like Elon Musk, coming up with innovative ideas around clean cars and clean transportation and solar power and all that. Government ain't going to do that. It's going to be entrepreneurs. Okay, so what's rule number 4 of getting across the jungle? And that is, you better be a master of time management. Time management. I recommend you read a book by Harvard Press called Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker. In fact, you can just read the first 5-6 pages. It's a small booklet. I've been recommending it for years. I should have gotten a cut from all the Harvard said I've sold more copies of their Harvard Press books, I think, than anyone. But I didn't get a cut on most of the people who got it, but I'm happy for you to read it. I don't have to make money off everything. I just like to recommend that book. And in the beginning of that book, he says, look at the great geniuses or the great accomplishers, quote unquote, of the last 500 years. Leonardo da Vinci, right? Albert Einstein, Bach, the musician. Same 24 hours as the most unproductive people on planet Earth. So you better become a master of time management. That is a rule of this jungle, because the jungle, the sun sets and rises, and you got a minimum amount of time to get across this jungle. You don't want to spend too much time in the night in the jungle. Well, on your way to making your first million, you don't want it to take 50 years, because making your first million in 50 years, there was a guy, Mr. Beast. He's one of the top YouTube influencers. I think he's the fastest growing channel on YouTube. And he told me, he's like, I want to make money now. He's only 20 years old. He goes, I want to make money now. Like, what's money going to do? It's not going to be fun to have money when I'm 93. So that's what I mean. This jungle, the sun goes up and the sun goes down. And if you don't manage your time when the sun's up, you get stuck in a dark jungle. And you don't want to be in a dark jungle. And to me, the dark jungle represents being 90 years old. A lot of billionaires on the Forbes list are very old. And that's great. I'm happy for them. But what would you rather have? $1 million at 20 or 25 or $1 billion at 100? My grandma's 101. So it's realistic. She could use $1 billion for something, but I don't know what she'd use it for. If you get $1 million in your 20s, you can invest in, pretty much be set for life if you're smart and frugal a little bit. So the point is here is that time management is one of the essential criteria that people don't really get. Like, people who talk to me about making money are like, yo, Ty. I mean, they kind of get it. They ask me about daily routine, but their real thing is like, how do I market this idea? Or how do I build this app? Or how do I raise $1 million from Kickstarter or a venture capitalist? And I'm going, yeah, but how's your time management right now? Because most people's time management sucks. So let me give you a few thoughts and things I've learned. I've tested many things. I want to be known as a mad scientist. I think I already am a mad scientist. I try everything. So I've tried the Pomodoro method. I've tried, there's the 80. Pomodoro is a series of timers you set. You do like 20, 25 minutes, then you take a small break for 5 minutes, and then you do. I've done that. It's very structured, Pomodoro. There's a thing called the Pareto principle. Tim Ferriss talks a lot about 80-20 rule. So his thing for time management is basically, you focus on only things that move the dial and you let everything else kind of fall apart. Another book on time management, Gary Keller, The One Thing. He has this kind of domino effect time management. So he says you can't manage all your time. You can't manage everything equally. So you find the one thing in your life that you can push on. And when you push that domino, all the time management kind of falls in place. And I will tell you, of all those different philosophies, there's other philosophies. I gave you 4. The Pomodoro kind of method, the highly structured, the Pareto. The Pareto, Gary Keller, and these are kind of similar. They're like highly focused kind of thing, the Tim Ferriss thing. But there's different. I could go on. You can talk for hours. There's a book called Getting Things Done, very famous book. It's probably sold, 5-10 million. He has this whole structure of he's more of like an organizational time management person. So he's like, you have file folders and you have your projects and you get things off your plate real fast and you drop you create a project and then you divide it up into all these tasks Again, I've tried that one too. So I will tell you, there's truth to all of these systems of time management.